Welcome back, everyone. I'm happy to see that almost everyone has stayed until the final session of Lennart Meri conference. And in a way, this is the most important session because we are going to discuss Russian society and why they tolerate the sort of regime Russia has. If that was different, all our other discussions, previous ones, would have been either unnecessary or very different. I'm not going to introduce the panel. They are all well-known and excellent speakers on that topic. We have an all-Russian panel. And I would like to start with a personal recollection from late spring or early summer last year. I was in Moscow. It was freshly after the Crimea annexation, and the whole town was slightly shocked, but also very defiant. It was a warm, nice evening. I was with an Estonian friend. We took a walk to Patriarch's Pond. It was almost like in a novel. At the hour of a hot spring sunset, two citizens appeared at the Patriarch's Ponds. Except for us, it wasn't empty there. There were many people walking, having good time. These days there is a sign there that tells you never to talk with strangers. We ignored it. We talked with strangers, and these were all very pleasant conversation. And when we walked back, my friend asked, "But how can it be that all these nice people can tolerate such horrible foreign policy and approve of it?" And this is the question that we are going to discuss here. We have one proper sociologist among us, Aleksey Levinson from the Levada Center. And those of you who don't know, Levada Center is a fantastic place. It's excellent scholarship on Russian society, and I am proud to say that it started not in Estonia, but in close cooperation with Estonia. Yuri Levada and his people used to have frequent seminars in southern Estonia, in Tartu universities, sort of staff retreat house, and that's where much of this excellent scholarship was first drafted. But Aleksey, give us a framework of understanding. What is it that we're actually dealing with in Russia these days? To what extent is it Putin we are having problem with? To what extent it is the wider setting of Putin's regime? To what extent is it oil-based economic model? And to what extent it is actually Russia itself? Certain mind patterns that are functional in Russia and shape the thinking and would still be there even when Putin leaves and oil runs out.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and I'm very proud of being here and representing my institution here. And thank you very much for this invitation. Second, I'm entitled to represent Russian people, or at least their thinking here, and it is not an easy task since to say what about 100 million people think, and to put it into one word, it's a very risky endeavor. Well, Russian Center of Public Opinion, Levada Center, really is polling the adult population on the representative basis, the adult population of Russia. It is 18 plus, and they comprise about 100 million of people. Certainly, they are not of one opinion, all of them, but still the state of mind of this mass of population we are witnessing now is truly unprecedented, and at least our observations started, which were started in the end of 90s, have never brought such kind of results as we have now, and we have it on the regular basis. Well, we can start with this notorious notion of Putin's rating, and you know that it has reached the 88% score after the annexation of Crimea, and what is and this was just the repetition of the record, which was firstly registered in the year of 2008 after the victory over Georgia. But that time it was a sort of a peak. Now we have a kind of a plateau, and we have a new kind of routine that is 85, 86, 87% of support of Putin, just a moment, is now a new norm. And the question is, what made Russians to get together around this symbol which Mr. Putin is for them?
And I was wondering, what does Putin's reading actually show? Because many people say it doesn't show anything, it's all propaganda. I'm inclined to think it shows something,
yeah, sure.
But what it is?
Sure. Well, being a sociologist, one must think not about the personality of Vladimir Putin or of propaganda of these RT or other TV channels, but of this state of the society. And what I call unprecedented is just that. Not the personality cult or not the adoration of Putin. There are no such important. They are not important elements of this. They are present there, but not this is the case we are dealing with. The society now is concentrated around two, I would say, two poles or two pillars. One is this just this symbol of current present-day Russia. Mr. Putin is in this capacity very fitting, and another is United States. Believe me, no, we did not register this hate of anti-American feelings or anti-American manifestations of the public in Russia since the end of the 80s. And it's amusing because not the very actions of the United States were the reason. The actions were just, or the imagined actions of the United States are used as rationalization of this, let me say, hatred against the United States. And we, in popular parlance, in what people risk to spell out, to say, the World War III is now on the scene. It makes things extremely risky, and we all realize the level of, maybe not all, but we should realize the risk of that. But when Russians think about this World War III and about using of nuclear weapons and all things like that, let me say it is not that serious. And even let me say that these anti-American feelings are kind of play in the mind. And the same I would say about the attitude of Russians towards Putin. It is not just the all-pervading love or adoration or, again, let me say, the personality cult. People are rather critical about this leader in what, if it is about economics or internal policy. What is behind all that? Behind all that is the idea of great power, purely symbolic construction. Russians are seeking for this status of great power, being on equal terms with another great power, which is United States. And this is the ultimate goal of the public opinion at the moment. So Mr. Putin is the one who paves the way to that. And the United States is at the same time the rival and the goal to attain, to be on equal terms with the states. On the military basis or on peaceful, it's almost all the same, because the final idea is just to be acknowledged. To be acknowledged. Why Russians are so zealous, so strongly willing to have this? This is another question. I think I will have time to risk with my own explanation of that. But let me just finish this little part of my presentation with one fact that is also very new for the studies of people's mind. Russian public opinion is now following suit the Russian diplomacy and Putin's discourse, I mean the one that is presented to outer world, which is making a kind of new double talk, not of Orwellian kind, but a new one. Just here in the data of the latest opinion poll conducted in this April, we have, so to say, the confession. Let me cite it. The question is, which of the opinions about the presence of Russians' support of Donbass Opalchency, how they call this?
Rebels.
Militia.
We're militia.
Militia, yeah, militia. You would agree with. 37% say Russian leaders are true, saying that there is no Russian troops or Russian military technique over there in Ukraine. 37. 38%, that is just the same, say, okay, maybe there are Russian troops there, but the current international situation is such that it is correct to deny this. You know, it's a pretty new phenomenon because even 2 months ago, it was very difficult for us to come to disclose this trick of mind because people they did it in their minds, but they didn't risk to spell it out. Now it is open. They follow the way our diplomats behave, saying something which they don't expect to be believed. Maybe this is a part of this hybrid politics. And this is a new invention. Neither Gromyko nor Molotov did that. This is something new, and I'm not an expert in diplomacy, but I'm really convinced that this is something new in the minds of Russians. Again, why this is a new phenomenon, then we will talk about this later. Thank you.
Let's talk about, and whether it is new. And it's very interesting you say that people follow the leader's messages, because I've long detected, and I actually planning to write about it, how Putin in his communication, I think, uses some Soviet codes of communication. I mean, many people here would say that Putin is lying, and surely he is, but I think often there is certain logic behind the lies. And to me, I often try to decode based on my experiences in my Soviet childhood, when it was common to say one thing and mean something completely different, and you expect people to understand what it is that you actually mean, and they did. In the Soviet Union, they did, but the West doesn't, because they don't function or we don't function in that framework. Or the same thing about the troops. I think for Putin, when he said there are no troops in Donbass, I think what he was saying that you cannot prove it, or sometimes they put it quite like that, they may be there, but you cannot prove it, and that is also something very Soviet. If it couldn't be proved, it could be differently, and many things actually existed in one way and were talked about in a different way, and everyone understood that this was how a system worked. But I don't want to take the conversation back to Putin. I think we've had enough of him, so let's talk about the Russian people, and it seems fitting from here to continue with Masha, who has actually studied the return of ideology. Tell us what you are finding. I maybe also should point out that actually our panel represents two strands in the Russian society, the ones who emigrate from Russia, and that includes Masha as well as Artemy, who have left Russia recently, and the ones who stay there, hoping, at least in Vladimir's case, to change Russia. But Masha, from your American now perspective, how do you see your former country? I'm reading some of your pieces. It is very sad. It almost sounds like a country you have had and lost.
That's very much what it feels like, yes. So a couple of things that I want to say. One is that, I don't think that we've had enough Putin. I don't think there's ever enough Putin. But just picking up on what you were saying about the way that he handles the questions about Donbass. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, he didn't say that there are no Russian troops on the ground in Donbass until last week, during the hotline. Before that, he had indeed said there's no proof that there are Russian troops on the ground of Donbass. And here I would differ with Aleksey Levinson a little bit, because I think that's actually a very old strategy. It's not an old strategy for Soviet diplomats, but it's an old strategy for bullies to say whatever they feel like saying. And that sort of attitude, well, you can't prove it. And what are you going to do about it? That attitude is very familiar. So, but that's all very lighthearted. I actually want to pick up on a couple of things that Aleksey said in a different way. I think that, in addition to double speak, we're also seeing double think, right? And that division between what you think about the authorities and the government publicly and what you think about them privately is very familiar from Soviet times. And I'm not talking about sincere privately held beliefs and public lies. I'm talking about the double track mind, where sort of in your public persona, you identify with the state, you identify with the government, you think it's a great power, the imperial rhetoric is incredibly appealing. In your private self, you expect the authorities to cheat you, to always deny you what's due to you. You know they're always wrong and they're terrible to you, but these things are not in conflict. And that's really a key aspect of totalitarian psychology. And what I would argue has happened in the last 3 years is that Putin retrofitted the totalitarian way of being in society. And the question is, why? What made it so easy? Why were people so ready to accept that? Why was he able to basically throw an idea and have that idea take the place at the basis of a totalitarian system, and the whole thing sort of swung into action? And I think there are a number of factors, but the things that I would point to are the decisions that were made in the early 1990s about how Russian society was going to develop. The decision not to prosecute the Communist Party, the decision not to prosecute the organizers of the hardline coup in August 1991. I mean, if you think about it for a second, this mind-boggling idea that people who committed the highest crime that you can commit in a state, they placed the president under house arrest and declared military law, were amnestied.
Would you go even further? I mean, would you take it back to Stalin and him being, yesterday you were not here yet, but we had another session on propaganda war when someone pointed out that actually the cult of Stalin is something very dangerous in the sense that many of the problems we encounter in Russian psyche come together there. You prioritize big country over liberties, humans' lives, etc. Everything there is in Stalin's figure.
Absolutely, and I think what happened because of the decisions in the 1990s to basically let sleeping dogs lie, not have a conversation about the Soviet past, was that it paved the way to what Putin has done now, which is create a sort of seamless narrative of history, where there's a succession of great leaders from Ivan the Terrible to Peter the Great to Stalin to Putin. Right?
That is in perfect harmony with Putin's own alma mater, so to say, FSB. Yeah. I don't know how many of you have been to the FSB museum, and I'm not sure if you still can visit, but if you can, I suggest you go. And you can see how there is sort of uninterrupted line of their history that goes back to Peter the Great. That's when they start, when he had his son brought back to Russia, the son who had escaped. That's what FSB considers its birthday, effectively.
Right. So where were we?
So, but why don't we bring other people into the conversation before we move forward? Artyom, you're another person who has emigrated. Are you disappointed in your people? Because in a way, those of you who don't know Artyom, he is a sort of Mozart-like figure, or Boris-like a little bit, if that doesn't. He's one of the happiest people I knew in Moscow, and he loves life, and he uses life in so many ways. He makes music, he communicates, he has radio talk show, he edits Playboy. I mean, you are the sort of person who shouldn't get embittered by the regime, because you have a life outside that paradigm. So why did you leave?
Well, Aita and Tere and привет everybody. Well, first of all, I do not consider that I've emigrated seriously. I mean, I could go to the United States of America and get a much bigger salary than I do get here, but I've decided to place myself and my family in Estonia, not only because I really adore Estonia, but also because it's very close to the country where I was born. And I still go there and back, and so far these movements have not been stopped, thank God. Now, talking about disappointment, well, I think that there's been plenty of really disappointing things happening in the 21st century so far. And yes, the case of the Russian people is yet another dramatic example. You know that traditionally, from at least the 19th century, the time of Разночинцы and Народники, Russian thinking class has been always condemning the ruling elites, condemning and despising them, but at the very same time, we've always had deep respect for so-called ordinary people. No matter how they've been brainwashed, oppressed, or even corrupted by the establishment. And this, of course, was quite a tragic discovery of the past year or so, that the ordinary people, which were, you know, oppressed but still always good at heart, that they may be as bad, if not worse, than the ruling classes. And this discovery has split up intelligentsia, split up the civil society, and well, I do understand this feeling, but I don't entirely subscribe to it, and I would like to explain very briefly why. There's a question of quantity and the question of quality. Aleksey has just told some important things about that. If we talk about quantity, then of course, you know, the conclusion that Russian people are bad is largely based on these hypnotic figures of 85 to 87% fully loyal to Putin and his weird policy. Another thing, of course, is the displays of mass enthusiasm as shown on TV. Also, sometimes could be some real-life chats with the people in the street, or even friends. Now, first of all, I do not believe these figures, 85-87, because this figure contains two groups of people. One is the people who sincerely support Putin, and the other is simply the people who don't want to get into trouble, period. Because well, I'm afraid I'm undermining the value of Levada Center's investigations, but no one trusts in anonymity in contemporary Russia, and if you have pollsters coming to your house or calling you on a phone, everyone understands that this person can be easily traced down if needed. So therefore, of course, if they came to my place, I would tell them openly what I think. And this is the reason why I'm now in Estonia, not in Moscow.
So they will not come.
Well, they know my opinion anyway.
Takes more trouble to come here.
So, but the normal people, you know, they say, you know, like if it was 1981 and somebody, you know, some pollsters in civil clothes would come and ask you, what do you think about our General Secretary, Mr. Brezhnev? Do you support the brotherly help of the Soviet army to the people of Afghanistan and so on? So if you are not a hardline dissident, of course you would say, well, it's okay, it's great, fantastic. We all like it, we all approve it. The atmosphere in contemporary Russia is just like this. I mean, I personally see no difference. If there is a difference, then it's a difference for the worse, not for the better. So, but still, of course, there is a wide popular support for what's going on. But I wouldn't say it's 85%. I would put it somewhere very vaguely between like 40 and 60, more or less. Maybe Aleksey will correct me. Why?
We will trade.
Why are these people supporting Putin and the policy? despite the fact that life in Russia is really miserable. I know that I'm wasting time, but I just want to give you a very good example. There is Pskovskaya Oblast, the Pskov region, which is neighboring Estonia. And sometimes when we go to Moscow or St. Petersburg, we drive by Pskovskaya Oblast, and it really looks bad. I mean, small towns totally ruined and so on. We stopped in one of those small towns near Staraya Russa, and there were two babushkis. And well, I like to talk to people, and I spoke to this babushka, and I told them, look, everything is so ruined here. You could stage, a film here about the Great Patriotic War. It looks like, it's wartime. And the babushki, well, actually one of them told me, she was really old, so she knows. She said,
Когда немцы выходили, было лучше.
Which means when the Germans were leaving, it was better. So it just, tells you, what kind of state we live in. But despite that, and people are very unhappy, but, another good achievement of Russian sociological science. Very recently, a couple of days ago, or 3 days ago, FCIOM, an official sociological service, they've published their results, which said that 60% of people in Russia are absolutely happy about what's going on in the country and feel now much happier than ever before. So why is this happening? I think it's a very simple process. I think people simply would say they delegate their happiness to the state. They now know that that their life is miserable, and it will not be changed. It's hopeless. But they want to compensate all this with a vague understanding or a feeling or some kind of emotional sensation that okay, well, I'm in deep something, but we are a strong country with a strong leader, and therefore I might be lost, but our country is rising. This is I think a very simple psychological thing. Now. Quality. We've been talking about quantity, now we are talking about quality. I think there is an English proverb which says, beauty is only skin deep. Well, I can tell you, with all my knowledge of Russia and Russian people, that the support of Putin is only skin deep. It's a very superficial support, and even those people who sincerely vote for Putin and not because they're simply afraid of doing something else, even their support is of very low quality. All the people who were ready to die for Putin or Great Russia or whatever, they're already dying in the Ukraine. All others, they will never get out of their sofas. They will never turn off their TV and go something and do something. It's a very apathetic attitude. I would say that apathy, fear, and hopelessness is what drives people. And this, I think, is both good news and bad news. Well, the good news is that there's no passionate support for the vicious policy of current Russian leadership. The bad news is that there's no support for anything, including the protest movement, the civil rights movement, whatever. Our panel is called fertile ground. This is not a fertile ground. This is a stony ground. Nothing grows on the stony ground. But you can install something on the stony ground, some kind of Potemkin villages and so on. And this is also very easy to do in Russia, unfortunately, now, because people are very easily manipulated. They don't believe in anything. They don't want to know the truth. I mean, there's now a lot of chat about Russian language TV channels broadcasting in Europe, particularly in Estonia, Latvia, Finland, whatever. And the argument is that, we must tell people the truth. Now, people don't need it. People don't need the truth. What they need is they want to hear what they want to hear. Something about great Russia, something about enemies, something just to make their life, their miserable life, emotionally slightly more comfortable. And I've written in one of my articles, or posthumous, I think, that I'm quite sure what kind of sociological outcome will be in July this year when the results of the investigation of Malaysian Boeing being shut down. And I said that, in my humble opinion, 45% of Russians will say, well, the Americans have bought this commission, period. Another, 25% will say that the European homosexuals have forged the evidence. Another 15% will say, yes, we've shot this plane down and it was absolutely right. Well, of course, the fifth column, the 15% will say, well, of course, it's a crime. We knew it from the very beginning. How awful. And maybe 1%, maybe even less, will be surprised. Wow, so this is the awful truth. We didn't know that. And this is the universal attitude.
Aleksey, do you agree with what was just said about attitudes and propaganda? Or I've discussed it with you, and I've been wondering why does propaganda work nowadays? Because yet again, in Soviet time, it didn't. In Soviet time, many of these intuitive reactions would have been different. People would intuitively have believed that Soviet Union did something wrong, even if it actually was America. So why is it different now? Why, Aleksey, I think you are some insightful things to say. Just do it shortly.
Well, I would unfortunately, I would disagree with Masha, saying that no news in this double think and double talk. The fact is that the construction of this double thinking and double talk is different from what we know from the Soviet times. This doubleness is there, and this maybe it's not a purely Soviet phenomenon. But what is, I would say, the modern manifestation of that is that people don't let themselves think what is true. They are lying not to the outer world. They are lying to themselves. They want to ensure or to make themselves think what the authorities spell out.
But why?
And this is, this is the reason the TV, however lying, is welcomed by Russians. They don't switch out their TV sets even when they are pretty sure that all this trash is just something made up by the journalist. They let them lie. This is a very important phenomenon. They don't try to catch them on their lie. No. Keep on lying because it is, so to say, soothing their burning souls, because the truth about Crimea, about Donbass, and about all that kind of thing is widely known. It's universally known. There is no secret. You cannot disclose. Coming out and saying, look, there are Russian troops there. They say, okay, we know. Or they will not say, but they do know that. It was like, you know, it was like declaring that Moscow Major Lushkov was a thief. Moscow Russian TV spent several evenings disclosing the mischiefs of Lushkov. Who cared? We all knew that.
Actually, Aleksey, that was a very important message. Because it communicated that this was now part of the public conversation, and it hadn't been.
The message was now there is no coverage of Putin over this person. So his popularity dropped within weeks.
That's what Artyom said about pink skin.
Yeah, this is you know, the matter of truth in Russia is not that simple as it should be. The truth should be truth and the lie should be lie. Now the things are very complex. The truth is there, but it should not be there.
You know, writing in The Origins of Totalitarianism long before the collapse of the Soviet Union, Hannah Arendt wrote that it is in the nature of the totalitarian regime to rob people of the very ability to form opinions. And so, you know, I don't think we're seeing anything new. And I think, in fact, what we're seeing is, you know, it is a matter of survival in a totalitarian country to know what you're supposed to say, not just say, but believe. And that's, you know, that's what distinguishes totalitarianism from tyranny. And that's why I think the distinction between people who sincerely hold these beliefs and who don't sincerely hold them is kind of not there. You know, I do agree with you that it's very thin in the sense that it's short-lived, but that's a very scary sign because Putin is very aware of the fickleness of public opinion. I mean, they're obsessed with public opinion. They're constantly looking at the numbers, and that's part of the reason for the constantly changing message, because you have to keep people on their toes and you have to keep mobilizing them around constantly changing things. So we're going to see something new, you know, coming down the pike very soon.
Well, but you know, using so easily the words about the totalitarian regime, let's not forget that the totalitarian phenomena in in current day Russia are not supported by the repressions, by the mass repressions. This is a very specific kind of totalitarianism created without the repressive machinery comparable to KGB and to the repressions of the late 30s or late 40s. Well, we all know about the victims of this court decisions about the Bolotnaya people, but this is counted in dozens, not in dozens of millions. So the current day totalitarian regime is not built on the fear. It's built on another basis. And we should know what kind of basis is this. It's a very important. I'm not going to thank people who are not arresting ourselves, but let's be true to that. This is a phenomenon of different kind, and let us not turn our heads all times backward, which is Russia is doing all the time. Let us not do that. Peter the Great and John the Terrible are there, but something new is happening in my country at the moment.
Thank you. This is fascinating. I could actually continue speculating about that, but I want to bring Vladimir in. You encounter many of these things on a very practical level. As a politician, you campaign in provinces or a province of Moscow called Yasenevo. You talk to people, and I suppose you are the one who tries to make this connection in their minds between everyday misery, I'm not sure how miserable it is in Jasenovo, but there are issues there, and political system. So why have these two things not become more firmly linked in people's minds? I mean, again, I commit the sin of looking back, but in Soviet Union they sort of were, and now they clearly are not. So.
Let me add a little bit more, maybe if not optimism, it's hard to be an optimist in modern day Putin's Russia, but a little bit of hope. I think we all need a bit of hope when it comes to Russian affairs. And I really do have this much field experience because I'm the chairman of the party which participates in elections in the dozens of regions in the past few years, and mainly on a regional municipal level. I myself have not only been running as a candidate, although I was banned, but I have visited more than 60 Russian regions in just past few years, and I literally talked to thousands of people, so I think I have a bit better understanding of the feelings among the society, and the hope is based on few things. Point number one, never listen to Russian liberal intelligentsia when it comes to assessing the mood of the society, because if you listen too much, it's just like a Marilyn Manson type of thing. You might, if you listen too much, you might as well go and hang yourself. Point number two, don't listen to pollsters. And Aleksey, this is not because of.
Don't listen at all.
Don't listen to politicians.
As a matter of fact, this is not of disrespect for you. You do a great job. But the big thing about the Russian society and politics, which is always important to understand, is inertia. This is the key word. Inertia is the key word which explains a lot of processes in the Russian society. I will give you just one very plain and simple example. You all know the story about the breakout of negativity in the society connected with the past State Duma elections in December 11. United Russia got less than 50%. And after that, we saw unprecedented mass rallies in December 11th, not only in Moscow, but in most big Russian cities. Unprecedented, unseen in 20 years. And nobody, no opinion poll, have ever predicted that, anything like that to happen. They were incorporating this big inertia, predicting that Putin will win big numbers, will return to power, continue to govern such as it is, and so on. By the way, speaking about listening to politicians, there's my speech on the record at Chatham House in London, which is available online, the transcript, which I gave a month before these elections, where I said, believe me, Putin will have a very turbulent and uneasy comeback to power. And I wrote an article in Vedomosti just a week before Duma elections saying that United Russia will get less than 50, and that was contradictory with all the polls. So I would tell you from my best, you might disagree with me, but I will tell you from my best field experience just a few points. First, don't think of the majority of Russians as an aggressive nation which have just, got infected with this imperial fever and wants to conquer neighboring countries and conquer the world. No way. There is just to my assessment, between 5 or 10% people in the society in Russia which are really infected with this stuff. They are very loud. You can hear this noise. From this noise, a lot of you get the conclusion that Russians are all aggressive, imperialistic, and so on. There is no way things are like that, because majority of Russians regarding Ukraine believe that what is happening is that a friendly, brotherly nation is being attacked by a bunch of local fascists who are supported and financed by America, which have instigated a coup d'etat. So this brotherly nation is currently being held hostage by these nasty people, and we are there to help. This is what Russians think. They are not aggressively pursuing and supporting some of the agendas of the Russian authorities regarding Ukraine. This is not because of aggression. This is because of the need to help. This is actually, if you watch the propaganda carefully, this is how it is all explained. The other point is that, contrary to the efforts of propaganda, we have talked about these issues yesterday, and somebody said that there is no parody on Russian propaganda right now. Oh, yes, there is. We have a meme very popular now, which is called "Чего там у хохлов?" Those who speak Russian, they will understand. Which is a meme that reflects that people are being brainwashed too much about developments in Ukraine, and they don't hear enough about developments in their own country. Believe me, people in huge numbers already start to complain. Speaking about the fertile ground, we have recently announced coalition of different opposition parties to take on the upcoming regional and state Duma elections next year. This is one of the first issues on the agenda, to actually pursue this propaganda point. Stop talking about Ukraine. We can have different opinions about what's going on there, but let's go back to domestic issues, which are very harsh. And it's already the momentum is on our side, because even opinion polls reflect that the economic situation, which is disastrous, in which is there to last, in which I completely disagree with Sergei Alexashenko, this economic situation is already few months pretty much on top of all the list of concerns of the Russian people. Yes, they continue to watch the coverage of Donbass and stuff, but they do care about their pockets, about their wallets, and about the economic situation at home, and this will grow. So two things. First, in masses of the society, there is no this imperial fever. Second, there will come a point, it will be a gradual process, like after the crisis of 2008, it took 3 years of this gradual build-up of negativity before it broke out during the Duma elections. But this build-up is going on. The society wants to actually bring Putin to accountability, and sooner or later this will happen. Russians are slow people in terms of reaction to political developments and so on. But this reaction might be quite strong, and there will be a breaking point down the road, I'm pretty sure about that.
Aleksey, you wanted to disagree?
Although I am the object of disbelief here, but let me say that I'm in total agreement with what Vladimir has said about the aggressiveness of Russia. Being that much concerned with this great powerness, and being so much concerned with America as a rival, Russians, when being asked what is the harm America can do Russia, they position so to say, the occupation of, in terms of, in case of military conflict, or in case of military counter, how to say, противостояние, yeah? Yeah. So what kind of menace comprise United States for Russia? The highest score, 84%, has the answer. America makes obstacles on Russia's way to the future. This is something very, very vague and has nothing to do with military aggression, because the invasion is envisaged by 31%, while the control over Russian economy, 40%. Control over Russian political course, 24%. And навязывание, imposing align ideas and values, 36%. So this is purely ideological, ideological part of the business, not military. And if we ask about what is the best thing Russia should do towards Ukraine, establish good relationships. No idea about occupation of or division of. I have no right to say no idea. Yes, there are minority, so to say, militant minority who want just to capture Kiev and other and have other victories of this kind. But the bulk of Russians are in this specific state of mind. They are mobilized. They are got together around Putin and this anti-Americanism, but they are not ready to fight. This is self-perpetuating and in a senseless mobilization. And this was done by the elites for their own purposes. I think, I'm not a politologist, I don't know what is going on in Kremlin, but I understand that Putin needs this support from people in his interactions within the highest political circles. There is no such need in the bottom of the society. The society is, as to the economical matters, people are aware of how bad they are, and they even are aware about the effect of the sanctions. Just to say a couple of words about that, they know that the sanctions, and the more so the counter sanctions, are just doing harm for to what is going on in their icebox and in their pocket. Well, they still think we should go on with our politics because we are proud people. But there are two layers. One of the realistic understanding of what's going on in everyday life, and how corrupt and how ineffective are Russian authorities. And believe me, the criticism is boundless among Russians. But there is another layer where this proud of being a great power is. Is it superficial? In a sense it is. In a sense it is. But just these two layers are there, and one will not vanish just in a moment. It is also very important for this construction of the society, which is lacking what? It is lacking. It is lacking intermediary part, which is core and essential for the normal society to function. This is the level of the civic society, of tertiary organizations. It's a very long story to discuss it here. But this is the deficit of the construction of Russian social structure. And maybe this is the reason we are, oscillating between these two, the poverty and the great power.
That's a good point. Artyom, you wanted to comment very briefly because the audience is indicating that
very briefly,
they want to speak too.
Aleksey has made a very interesting, although slightly controversial, comment about that the recent political system in Russia is not based on fear, unlike in the Soviet times. Well, I don't entirely agree with that. I think that fear is still there. But really, I think that this is a slightly better one word to describe what this regime is based on when it works with people. It's based on hopelessness. Exactly what, Mr. Milov also was talking about. He was talking about hope. It's based on hopelessness, and this is also what makes Putin's Russia different from the Soviet Union. Because Soviet Union was about hope, it was about future, it was about building communism, it was about science, technology, space race, and so on. Putin's regime is about the past. It's just a dark substance which gives no future, no hope, traditional values, dark ages, and people seem to react on it, unfortunately.
Let's bring in the questions from the audience, and I know some of you wanted to comment. You can do that when replying. President Ilves first. So your hand first.
Yeah, just a couple of observations. But first of all, just a minor one. If you want to know where you are in Estonia, Count Beckendorf was from 30 kilometers from here, founder of the Okhrana. So, on the other hand, he was a German. But just an aside. I would just start off on something which I'd ask your opinion on, and I think it applies only to the elites. But a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, was extremely shocked when he was in at a party of hip and trendy people in Moscow, and two Harvard-educated guys, one an MBA, I don't know what the other one was basically lambasting the United States, defending Crimea, you know, and he was, wait a minute, what's going on here? I mean, you know, the whole entire idea of U.S. Sort of reach out and, you know, Fulbright scholarships is to have people go, oh my God, I didn't understand. This is what democracy is about. And here it was the opposite. Which when you told me this, I thought of a book I read about 35 years ago, Among the Believers by V.S. Naipaul, where he studied fundamentalist Muslims, who he found to his surprise were largely Western-educated engineers. Who then, returning to their homeland, said, we will never be like where I studied, therefore I'm going to go back to my roots. I mean, at least that was his psychological explanation. And his psychological explanation actually explains, in many ways, that the 9/11 crowd, I mean, the people who flew those airplanes, because they were, you know, they were educated at Hamburg and other technical universities, engineers who went back home and then changed their minds. So this is just probably the elite, but I mean, I'm struck when I see that Sergei Lavrov's daughter has graduated my alma mater, Columbia, which is probably the most liberal, has the most sort of fundamentally liberal philosophical education available in the United States, or half your courses are about Plato's Republic, followed by Aristotle and so forth. And a heavy concentration on the Enlightenment. So what are we going to see is what's going on a fundamentalism, a rejection of the West, and by the elites out of despair of seeing Russia become a liberal democracy and therefore returning to, you know, the three autocracy, Derzhava and orthodoxy. Is that what we're seeing? I mean, that was what Milosevic appealed to in 92, 93, was precisely that. And I remember watching, you know, with horror in 92, 93 with Orthodox priests blessing with holy water tanks and AK-47s, and I didn't quite understand how this fit with my notions of Christianity, but is that what we're seeing?
They have also been blessing the central bank servers, you know. They have also been blessing the central bank servers in order to keep ruble rates up. Who wants to answer? Artem, you started.
It didn't help, the central bank. So I can give a very simple and superficial answer. I can give a very simple and superficial answer. And I hope that my partners on the panel will give a more in-depth analysis of this. I personally think that if we are talking about the Russian Harvard-educated or Oxford-educated jet set, who are Krim-Nashists and so on, I personally see this as a case of pure conformism. It's very easy to go with the whole pack. And of course, all these kids, they've been brought back to Russia for two reasons. One, for the ideological reasons, because it's considered uncool for top-rank officials to have their kids in enemy countries. B, most of those kids, they wouldn't find work in the United States or UK and so on. So they've got their diplomas abroad, but they know that the real money can only be made in Russia thanks to its corrupted economic system.
I think it's a hell of a conceit to think that you can take somebody out of their, the system of values and the worldview with which they grew up, place them in a liberal American university for 4 years, and have that create profound change. I've seen cases when that's happened, but I think it's a miracle when it happens. I think most of the time, these kids, especially the kids of the Russian and post-Soviet elite, which is very much a post-Soviet elite, right, go in with this very ingrained worldview, which is that we all know how the world works. Everybody is bought and sold, everybody is corrupt. But the Americans insist on pretending that that's not so. But we know better. And then, that helps explain everything away. It also helps them write their tests on Plato's Republic without that disturbing their basic beliefs about the world. They go back home and they're back in their environment.
Let me say a few words about how generally this thing works in the Russian society from my point of view. Yes, there is anti-Westernism. Yes, there is anti-Americanism which is building up. But all in all, this is just a periphery of the list of the daily concerns of the Russian people. So if we are talking specifically about this issue, yes, the trends are very negative. Is that important in the overall picture of attitude of people to what is happening in Russia politically? No. I'd say it's a side dish at best, which means, yes, there are negative trends, of which I am not scared because we have to find some opportunities to operate and to take on. And this opportunity, for me, the main thing is that the key notion of the social contract between Putin and the society in the past 15 years have been your living standards would improve. You will live better economically, financially, for which you will shut up in return and surrender your political and civil rights. That was the social contract as noted by many, many observers. Right now, and this is what Aleksey and many others have been talking, this social contract is undergoing not a very severe stress test, but a huge U-turn. The new social contract offered by Putin is basically saying you will suffer. We will actually go back in living standards, to some retrospective, but we will be great and we will fight America out there somewhere globally. If you ask my professional opinion whether such a social contract will work, no. It will break hitting the first obstacle in terms of the real economic difficulties for the majority of Russians. That is my forecast. All this foam of anti-Americanism, anti-Westernism will be washed together with this stress test. This is, I think, what is going to happen because Putin made economic prosperity clear top number one issue of his contract with the society. Now he's trying to, cover all his failures in that area with some leaves on which you can read the words USA, European homosexuals, what have you, right? The leaves will be washed away. The fundamentals will stay there. So I think this is, and sorry for speaking that long, but I think the important point about the Putin's 85% approval rating. Yes, people regard him as a symbolic leader, the portrait on the wall behind their backs, which they respect and they think that he's doing some job defending Russia's interests. But nobody likes the system which he built over 15 years. Very monopolistic, very tightly controlled, with no opportunity for businesses, no social lifts, with shutting down hospitals and firing medics and firing teachers. Nobody likes that. This is far more important than all the anti-American, anti-Western sentiment.
Thank you. I have medium-long list of questions here. I will group them in 2 or 3. Bobo was the next one who raised a hand. Microphone is coming. And then next one to Malhella Mueva, the other microphone from the other side.
A couple of questions. The first is, I have Russian friends with whom I've been friends for a couple of decades. For most of those 2 decades, in fact, for all of those 2 decades, they have held very strongly liberal views. What I'm finding in conversations that take place outside Russia is that they have actually become much more pro-regime in their views. Now, are they more pro-regime in their views, or is it a case of my country right or wrong? So that's the first question. The second question is, Aleksey, you mentioned this April poll, the survey that you did. But I think I'm maybe talking about the same survey because it asked a lot of key questions. And one of the most striking responses I saw was that 60% of those surveyed supported closer, better relations with the West and thought that Russia's policy should be more closely aligned with the West. So how does one reconcile that with the rising tide of anti-Americanism and indeed anti-Westernism in some places? Is that a matter of saying, it's not the West that's the problem, it's the United States? Perhaps you could sort of interpret that for us.
Thank you. You will remember your questions. I will still group them. Mal, please.
I'm Mal Hellam from the Open Estonia Foundation. And my question, it's more comment than question. And I would like to look into the future, what should be done and what could be done to help those people who risk their lives in Russia or outside Russia, or do this very important thing of promoting critical thinking and civic education. So why I am talking about that, as a donor organization, as a foundation, I was at the meeting 2 days ago in London with other funders, and unfortunately there is a so-called donor fatigue among many funders. And here I just would like to call all EU member states, governmental organizations, independent funders to increase and diversify the funding for Russian civic activists, individuals and groups, and really think about the new ways in this very complicated and hard situation where you cannot go to Russia anymore, and think about the new formats. So re-granting, use our experience here in the neighborhood, and bring people out from Russia in able to help and save them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mal. This is important. Next question is from Ilter Turan back there. And then Meri will be the last one in this round.
Thank you. I'm Ilter Turan from Istanbul Bilgi University, and therefore come from a society that has similar proclivities to electoral authoritarianism, but it doesn't quite succeed to the extent that it has in Russia. And one might ask the question as to why. Let me first note that there seems to be a similarity between Russian and Turkish intellectuals. That is to blame the voter for behaving inappropriately and therefore not supporting democracy. But maybe we have to blame a bit ourselves for misreading the situation. Let me just say, why is it that Turkey's electoral authoritarianism does not achieve the levels that one witnesses in Russia? And it seems that it's the highly institutionalized party system that actually cannot be undone very easily, and in fact, hopefully will reassert itself in a rather strong way in the forthcoming elections on June 7th. It seems, looking from a distance, that one of the reasons why the Russian voters might be sort of seen as not behaving the way they should in democratic societies is that they do not face a credible rival organizations. Russian party system seems to be much more fragmented than Turkey's party system. And if I were a Russian voter, unless I was assured that my vote would bring in a rival movement that would cater to my own needs satisfactorily, I'd sort of hesitate to vote for change too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Try to pose questions rather than comments, even though those are interesting and very relevant. Meri, please.
Thank you, Kadri, and thank you to... Thank you, Kadri. I'm Meri Madras, Sciences Po University, and in Paris and Chatham House in London. Thank you very much to the four of you, because I think you did put on the table many contradictions that summarize, in a way, the situation. What I understand is, in fact, we are discussing emotion polls rather than opinion polls. I think it's important to state it. I would like also to stress what Vladimir Milov said about December 11, that is, that something big happened. And it happened because of elections. So my question to you four is what do you expect from the next electoral cycle, December 16 and spring 18, since elections vote is really the last public political institution that is tolerated by the Putin regime. I guess a lot is expected from that process. What do you see coming? Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to answer? Aleksey, you had a specific question addressed to you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Meri, for this idea of emotion polling instead of opinion polling. Maybe right you are, and maybe this is the key to the explanation of these contradictions between the hostile attitudes towards Ukraine and the idea that we have help this country. Hostile attitudes towards the West and the idea that we have to have better relations with them. It's all there. It's all there, and to my mind, this is not the schizophrenia, and this is not the different opinion of different parts of the society. It's all going on in one and the same mind, and it has a universal explanation, not different keys for these different doors. And I think this is the specific state of mind, different from what we used to have, at least in this decade that I was witnessing and I was studying it. Okay, but what about the optimism? I do share the idea of optimism for future, because I think that this specific state of mind we are witnessing now is not something that is Russian mentality or Slavonic mentality or Russian Orthodox mentality or Byzantium or whatever. This is a temporary state of mind, and for me the problem is for the society as a whole how to get out of this bearsome, very hard to have this. Even the euphoria after the annexation of Crimea was something which was not that easy to maintain, and the state of affairs now, tested by our direct conversations with people, not the polls but the focus groups. I'm the professional focus groups moderator. It shows that people are not only sick and tired with this TV propaganda or this all external politics matters, but with this living against the laws жить не по лжи. It's not that easy to live alternatively, and this uneasiness should be somehow overcome. Yes, and I think the main trick, the main task for all of us, I mean in Russia, is to find this way out, because I think my guess is that the warfare is the way out suggested by the ruling elite at the moment. We have to think about another way out.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I actually, a couple of points. I don't think that the 2011-2012 protests were precipitated by the elections. I think they were precipitated by the September 24th announcement made by Putin and Medvedev. It's not elections. It's not exactly elections. Because what happened was that they violated the great divide between the great state and the imperial rhetoric and the state can do no wrong, and the authorities who will always cheat you and who will not give you your due. They violated this out in public. And that violation was insulting. It was offensive. There were other factors, right? It came at the end of a period of unprecedented prosperity. It came at a time when people's political motivations were in flux. But all of that came together to produce the protests. But the equation has changed significantly since then. I mean, the stakes for protesters have been raised a lot because of the political crackdown. You basically can risk everything when you go out to protest. You're not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed that you will go to jail, but the risk is very real, right? And that goes to Aleksey's point about the local nature of repression so far, right? They've been local. They've been only a handful of individuals, but they are significant, and they're a message to everybody else that this is what you risk when you are. I'm sorry, this is really difficult to talk. This is what you risk having happen to you if you go out to protest. And then the reward has also been lessened, because if there was some hope that it will set some mechanism into motion in 2011, 2012, it's been demonstrated that no, that will not happen. And my prediction is, because we're seeing a retrofitting of this totalitarian system, I think we're going to see a major political crackdown in the very near future. I think that is where the focus will shift from the war, because the war will wear out its rhetorical usefulness, and you need something else. And the fifth column is right there for the taking, and is very effective on all sorts of levels. And that's why I think your point about taking people out of Russia and giving them refuge and giving them help and giving them a little air to breathe is extremely, extremely important. That is really one of the most important resources right now.
Vladimir obviously disagreed, but very briefly, disagree.
On elections, of course.
Yeah.
This is a very attractive theory by some Moscow liberal circles that the protests were sparked not by the elections, but by the September 24th announcement. It just breaks being compared to reality, because the question was, why these people didn't go out on the 25th of September? There were no protests between the 24th of September and these elections. There were a lot of rallies, and all of them were slim. The big rallies really began in connection with the elections, so we need to understand the basics here. And Bobo, you asked a very important question about my country, right or wrong. I repeat, this is only until you have enough steaks in the freezer. After they expire, we'll see whose country is this. That's the point. And elections is a very important issue, the question from the Turkish colleague. I think there is a lot of misreading in the West about Russian elections. Just within the past year and a half, incumbent candidates have lost elections of mayors in third and fourth biggest cities of Russia, Novosibirsk and Yekaterinburg. Despite all the falsification, all the fraud, all the administrative resource, they still lost. United Russia in the past 2 or 3 years has been capable of showing landslide victories only with obscenely low turnout. Less than 20% turnout, this is their average. If they get bigger turnout, like it was on December 11th, I see that will be a great stress test for the system. And Meri, this goes back to your question about what do we count on. If you take a look at all the experience and also the opinion polls, when people are asked, okay, you don't like the situation in the country, but what you're ready to do to the protest, there is only one option which gets healthy percentage. Yeah, we're ready to go and participate in big federal elections. This is what happened in 2011. This will happen again. We got to develop the infrastructure to actually capture that momentum. This is something that was missing last time. This time we'll try our best to make sure that it is there.
Thank you. We are running out of time, but there are a few questions. I'm sorry if I don't manage to take them all, and please don't offer me comments. Try to ask questions and deal with comments later privately. Jaak Oilaniemi.
Thank you very much. As I listen to the panel, I almost make a comparison with the Victorian era, where people pretended that they behaved as they were supposed to behave. And what we see today, in the light of what the members of the panel have told, pretensions seem to be part of the explanation why Russians support the policies of their government.
Thank you. Charles Grant, right in front.
Charles Grant, CEO, London. We haven't talked about religion in the panel so far much, and I wondered when Putin does talk about it, he talks about defending Christian civilization, he talks about the moral corruption of the West. I'd like to ask the panel, does he really speak for the Russian people when he talks this language? And if the people have become more socially conservative and more Christian, why is that the case?
Thank you, that's a good question. Hossein Bassani. I will take all questions I've noticed, and then I can't take any more.
I have repeatedly heard from the members of the Russian opposition describing the Russian regime as a totalitarian regime. And my question is for Masha, because you use this description for the Russian regime as well, quoting Hannah Arendt. As far as I know, Arendt used this description for the regimes that have specific characteristics, for example, mass murders of certain groups of the society, or concentration camps, etc. Do you insist on this description? Do you believe that the Russian regime is really a totalitarian regime? Because, for example, Arendt even didn't consider the fascist Italy as a totalitarian regime. It was a dictatorship. So.
Thank you. There is Lena Nemirovskaya right in front of you.
As a foreign agent named in my country twice by prosecution and by Minister of Justice, I would like to say something. Two sentences.
Are you the only foreign agent we have here?
Only me. This is one. And any Russian session without quotation from Saltykov-Shchedrin, I think it will not happen as a discussion. He said 100 years ago, and even more, in 5 years' time, everything can be changed in Russia. But in 100 years, nothing will change fundamentally. This is one point. But still, to change something, I am really happy with this session, but I am more interested in what Aleksey said, because Yuri Levada himself started, and they are continuing. They are thinking about where is the Soviet mind now? During these 25 years, it still exists. It's Russian Soviet mind, it's Soviet mind, where it is. And I think it's still there. Depends on that. I think what we can do, Russians and not Russian who are interested in Russia, we just have one strategy: to enlighten people, to bring them to discuss, to tell them what's the meaning of the rule of law and all that such things, which is quite obvious in the West, but it's not real that they can work in Russian society. And I completely agree with Volodya, because he's still thinking we should do something. We should practice elections in the regions. We can do something as a new press, not official press, internet, all such things, all forums. And again, I am coming to one quotation which I read, and it's coming from Seneca. Today, harvest is bad, but tomorrow we have to sow the seeds.
Thank you, Lena. I feel, and unless, if in case some of you don't know, that is exactly what Lena is doing, educating and sowing the seeds of tomorrow, and she does it excellently. I feel on this note we need to close the questions and go back to panel. Answer what you can, and treat it as your final word as well. Please.
Okay, well, I think the question about religion precisely matches the question about Victorian pretension. I think that the case with religion in Russia, of course, it is very actively used by the establishment, all this orthodoxy. But again, Russians are not religious persons, although they love to pretend that they are hardcore fundamentalist Orthodox Christian. I mean, they can beat up the girls from Pussy Riot because of their insult for what they've done. But if you ask exactly the same people, where have you last been to church? If he's honest, he will tell you 5 years ago when I was on excursion to Vladimir or something. So this is the religious matter. Then elections. Well, I think considering the technique, the well-developed technique of Russian elections, well maintained in the past couple of cycles, I think that there will never be a civilized output from the elections, because eventually the authorities will draw as many votes as they want. But elections are always the perfect trigger for protest activities, for some activities for change, and as such, I think that it is very righteous and very important that RPR Parnas and other democratic parties in Russia will unite and participate in the elections in the noisiest way possible.
Masha.
So I'll take the question that was directly addressed to me. I try to be careful to use the words totalitarian mechanisms because I think that what we're seeing in Russia is actually something that's never been seen before and hasn't been described, which is their retrofitting of a totalitarian system. It's not a totalitarian country yet. It's a country that never dismantled the totalitarian mechanisms, and they're now being set in motion. But I think that process is underway. It's incredibly fast. It's incredibly effective. And actually, if you think of it that way, it does allow us to sort of to make some predictions about how it's going to go, which is why I think that mass repressions, or not mass repressions, but a major political crackdown is on the horizon.
Vladimir.
It's a hybrid totalitarian system, I would say.
A few points. First, religion. It's not that important electorally, and the Russian, inclination towards traditional Orthodox values is greatly exaggerated. I would agree with Artemy. Most parents in schools choose secular ethics for their children. People, barely follow the rules of not drinking and not eating meat before major religious holidays. They can barely tell you the names of the 12 apostles. Nobody read the Bible. I'm not even mentioning that. So there are some limits and thresholds. You just don't go dancing in churches. You do not offend the religious feelings of the people if they want to express themselves as Orthodox. But there you go, that's it. I mean, it's not a big political factor, contrary to, like anti-Americanism. Putin wants to create these phantom goals to actually divert public opinion from the major issues of the day. We want to bring this attention back. That's the game. And actually, speaking about the opinion polls showing the split personality of average Russian, this is very important. This is a very natural result of disinformation, of propaganda, and of lack of access to real information. There's one cure to that, the truth. This is what Boris Nemtsov did, issuing his reports in big numbers. And I also disagree. Somebody said that people are not interested. Oh, yes, they are. When we distribute these brochures, when we distribute these newspapers who in plain and simple language are telling the truth, they go like hotcakes, and we have phone lines blow up, after the feedback we get from people reading this stuff. So there is interest, and this is why I think there is hope.
And Aleksey.
Well, let me conclude going back to the ritual we had here yesterday in memory of assassinated Boris Nemtsov. What was the last tribute Nemtsov paid to his people? It was the rally, the manifestation after his death. And it was extremely important because lots of people thought, taking into account what all the phenomena, this enormous support of annexation of Crimea and things like that, people said the liberal opposition is dead, or there are just isolated personalities like Vladimir or like Boris. No, hundreds of thousands of people are ready to manifest their own vision, their own attitude to what's going on. They came to the place where Boris was assassinated, and they brought flowers, and they keep bringing flowers, the ones that are smashed by Moscow authorities, and they keep bringing it. What is that? They are showing, we are here. We are here. That's what I think we have to keep in mind.
I was at that manifestation on that Sunday, and it really was powerful and very special. And to conclude, I refer to the picture that my former colleagues have chosen to illustrate this session. They could have chosen a completely different picture if you think of it. There are many options, but they chose a hopeful-looking Russian girl with Russian flag on her cheeks and white ribbon in her hair. There are those Russians. Thank you all very much, and the audience, please remain seated for the conclusion.